everybody. I have Yulia from Zignify with me today to talk about sourcing from China. Now, Yulia does not necessarily look like she would be an expert at sourcing from China, but the reality is her story is fascinating. She was born just across the border in Russia and moved into China and lived there for many years. And so I find your story to be absolutely fascinating. And the fact that you've built up such an amazing, so many experiences around cultures from all over the world, including China. And then that allowed you to create a business where you can help people source, develop products, and have done it for many, many hundreds of sellers and help them create successful products. So thanks for joining us today and walking us through some of the things that you've learned over the years.
Yep, no problem. Always happy to share, right? Value
How many years?
overload is what
Yeah.
what is important for everybody.
How many years did you live in China?
Um, the first time I came to China was in 1993. As you said, I lived across the border, but I moved there in 2005 and I lived there until 2014. In 2014, we moved from China to Singapore. So all in all, full 9 years in China. And now, I mean, I'm back there very often. Of course, all the Canton fairs and in between and Alibaba and the rest of the things as well. So for me, it's second home, and I'm a fan of northern Chinese food, which is Dongbei, not southern. Yeah.
So you're more of a noodle fan than a rice fan.
No, just a good sweet and sour pork and good kung pao chicken.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I love traveling around China. I don't necessarily have a preference other than I'm not a cold weather fan. So, being born and raised in South Florida, I like the warm weather. And so this last trip, this was pretty cold. It was definitely much cooler than it normally is. And they didn't have heaters in Guangzhou. It's the equivalent of like South Florida, like where I live normally, but it was in the 30s and there was no heater. I was sleeping with clothes on. I was freezing. And yeah, I didn't enjoy that as much. But I guess northern China, the we visited for the first time this last year. We spent time in we have a luggage factory in the north, and then we finally went and visited the Forbidden City, which or yeah, the Forbidden City, which is
In
amazing.
Beijing.
Yeah, in
Hmm.
Beijing. It was incredible. I had no idea it was that big. Like when you hear like Forbidden City and then you see a map of it, like from a distance, it kind of just looks like a single, manor or small town. But the
Yeah.
reality is it is massive. We walked around the equivalent of like 10 miles and only covered half of it.
It's actually very important for everybody's listening. It's very important to understand the differences in culture between actually South and North. Most of the people who go to China, especially if they go during the Canton Fair to visit phase one, two, or three, they kind of stick to that part, right? You got Guangzhou, Shenzhen, a few places around. If you have factories in the north, they kind of move there. But the culture in the south and the north are very different. Do you actually know how the north of China became populated?
No, I mean, if you go back to the Three Kingdoms, like I know a little bit about Chinese history, but
Prisoners.
huh? Prisoners?
Prisoners.
Oh,
Like for
really?
UK, UK used to send people to Australia, like the colonies, all the bad
Yeah.
people, prisoners, etc., etc. And north of China was kind of the same for China. So they used to send prisoners to the north, cold, underdeveloped, etc., etc., harsh conditions. So people in the north are different in dealing like in terms of business in comparison to the people in the south. The South, they're more relaxed. They're not as pushy as the Northerners are. With Northerners, it's harder to negotiate in comparison to those that are located in the South.
That's really interesting to know. I didn't know that there was much of a difference on the negotiation side either. So it's always good to know. Plus, if you're going to give gifts or like what the courtesy is, the type of gift you give is probably different too, right?
Well, the Chinese, in my opinion, they like the gift that relate to the country where you come from, right?
Oh,
Even so, I come from Russia. My hometown, the name of my hometown is, people keep asking, is Blagoveshchensk. Very hard to pronounce. Then there is a river which is about 300 meters wide, and then there is China, and we have an FTZ, a free trade zone. So even there, you have a lot of Russians going there, and they still give gifts of Russian chocolate or Russian vodka or cigarettes. When we go to China every time, or because we're Amazon sellers ourselves, right? So we've been producing our products in China since 2014. And to our manufacturers, we send them gifts from Germany, German chocolate, tea, cookies, big hearts, like from Bavaria. If possible, when we go there in person, we bring beer, because gift giving, especially from a country where you come from, oh, Europe, so far away, America, and all, it's like magic, right? I think it's the same when you are a foreigner, for example, living in Europe and you've never been to Asia, and you receive something from Asia and it's very exciting. Chinese love this very much, and especially
I love that.
considering how they came to be, because a lot of the factory owners that you might be meeting right now, you meet the factory owner tells you, okay, let's meet in this 5-star hotel and have dinner there and all of those things. And you're like, okay, that's great, that's wonderful. And the next thing you see, he smokes inside the hotel, he takes his cigarette butt and he puts it out on this expensive carpet. It's not because he's a bad person, it's because the culture, he went from a farmer, literally, right, from living somewhere in a farming community
Right.
to a big businessman with money. So you need to understand the local culture very deeply, or try to understand it. And this is why historical facts are also important,
Right.
because you might see it as being rude, but that's actually because the person skipped that maybe one generation or this one part of how to behave in a 5-star hotel, right?
It's fascinating to me, and I even tweeted about this. The one thing that always gets me about China is just how the smoking culture, even for the younger kids, is really, really big. But that I hear this the same in Europe as well. I guess being in America now, we've kind of given it up for the most part. Like most people don't smoke as much in America anymore, but it's really addictive. And the younger kids I see, even just everywhere you walk, every time they get a chance, they've got a cigarette in their hand, and it's like the train stops and there's everyone jumps out to smoke a cigarette, jumps back in. They're constantly smoking inside and indoors whenever possible. um, like in our office building, even there's a stairway, and I was like, man, like in America you can't smoke indoors no matter what, and then you go into a stairway and you sneak a cigarette, that's really against the law. But then I went in there because I was smelling it and it bothered me. I grew up with two smoking parents and then they eventually quit, thankfully. But to this day, I'm still sensitive to it. But I would smell it. And I finally went into the stairwell, and there's literally, it says smoking section. Like it's designated to actually for the workers to go smoke there. And it's coming out into my office. And I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, how do I stop that? So it is interesting. It's very much part of the culture.
Yeah, it's, the culture is a very big thing. Like, if any of you have ever been to China and going to a restaurant is a very different, like we're all used to, those of us going to China and who have manufacturers in China, we're used to that. The manufacturer is going to pick us up, take us to a restaurant and feed us the best food possible, right? This is kind of an unspoken rule. You don't pay for food when you're in China, when you're going out with the manufacturers. But then again, the person needs to, we as foreigners, we need to be open to other cultures.
Right. Right, right, right.
One of the things to any of you who will go to China, I don't know, Brendan, how often do you go to a KTV in China?
So I've only been once, which is interesting because I'm not a very good singer at all. but it
For
is
all
super
of those of you
popular.
who don't know, KTV is a karaoke,
Yeah,
right? And it's
karaoke
very
bar. Yeah.
different from what you have in US.
We went in
Because
Japan too. It's huge in Tokyo too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's Japan, it's the Philippines, like,
Korea.
yeah, exactly. But in China, it's a whole other level because you can have a 5-story building and every floor will be, I don't know, a few thousand square feet. And it will have tons of rooms on every floor. Those rooms will be pimped out with the stage, screens, music, lighting. It's like a mini disco room. So when we did the China sourcing trip with Amy, right? So I took them to the KTV in Guangzhou. So all of the people, you go in, you put on music, you dance, you drink, you smoke, or like we don't smoke, but you do all of those things, and it's an absolutely different culture. It's an absolutely different way of doing business. So one of the tips, like cultural tips for any of you who are going to go to China, if and somebody said I'm too old, you're never old because you can sit there on the couch and make fun of other people when they're sinning, right? You're in a private room, but only your group. But one of the things you need to know with the Chinese, if you are not prepared to drink, do not accept the first drink from them. Both me and my husband Sebastian, who also lived in China, but he worked in China for a very large multinational corporation named ABB. And because of his engineering background and his white face, or tabidzi, big nose, they used to send him to a lot of presentations and a lot of like meetings with the Chinese. And if you agree for one drink, they will keep pouring. They will never stop, right? So you need to be extremely careful with this, especially, and this is a big thing. The Chinese, they like to take a bottle of Chivas Regal 12 years, mix it, one bottle, mix it maybe with 3 small bottles of green tea, and then you drink this like you're drinking tea. You don't notice anything, then 20 minutes later, you're out. You're completely drunk, you're out. I'm Russian. I used to drink alcohol. I was completely out. So cultural things are extremely important. When the Chinese, for example, like sunflower seeds. Brandon, do you eat sunflower seeds when you're
Yeah,
in
yeah,
China?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
All right. For me, it's a very big thing because I'm Russian. I actually take sunflower seeds, I fry them with salt, and I eat them as a snack. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it.
when I moved to Germany and I tried to buy them here, they're like, we have bird feed. Do you want that? I'm like, no, 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 for humans, because they don't know. So I need to go to
Yeah,
a
yeah, they
Russian
don't even
store
have it
here.
as a snack, but it's a huge snack. It's great for your digestion too. It's like a very common after you get done eating that you have some seeds. Yeah. In
Exactly. So
America,
in
like
China,
as a base, when you're growing up in America, we eat sunflower seeds while we play baseball. It's like a sports thing. Like you're chewing on sunflower seeds while you're sitting in the field, like waiting for someone to hit a ball to you.
and somebody asked a question in regards to 1688, and if you don't have trade assurance for payments, there are some payment options that I can later share with Brandon that you can use for payment on 1688, which also works kind of like trade assurance, which is not the Alibaba thing, but the local Alibaba thing. Just an FYI. So the point is you need to understand the local culture, and if they're spitting on the floor, if they're spitting on the plate, the chicken leftover or something like this, it's not an offense to you. This is the local culture, and this is one of the things you need to understand. I give you a wonderful example, and I gave it when we were in Orlando at Camp Econ. One of my friends many years ago in China, he had a baby, right? We came to see the baby. Hey, how are you? I come into his apartment, and he says, "Oh, Yulia, you got fat." I'm like, "Okay, nice, thank you." Right? I'm still offended, but oh well. And like sometime last year, I made a post on LinkedIn, and he saw my photo. And on LinkedIn, under my professional post, he writes, "Oh, Yulia, you lost weight." Right? So we need to understand that the cultures are very different. and we need to stay open. So I personally don't like to be called dear or darling by the manufacturers, but I try to speak Chinese with them so they kind of drop it. But a lot of people feel uncomfortable when they're being called in such ways. I think especially people who come from US and they don't have an understanding that the culture is different, and translation from Chinese and what it signifies in English, it's like two different things, right? So it doesn't stay on the same level. So yeah, these are kind of the basics of it. I can share the presentation and we can go through slides bit by bit. Yep.
No, absolutely. I know you have a lot of very specifics to share, but it's you're a wealth of knowledge, and everyone on the call is going to learn some valuable things today, I'm sure. So thank you so much for coming on, and I'll let you get started.
How do I can share the screen through, okay, I think I know.
Yeah, I can give you permission.
The one on the...
Perfect. You're sharing now. Perfect.
Okay.
How's your hubby doing? How's his leg?
Well, he went snowboarding. He lost half of the snowboard. We bought a new snowboard. Then we went snowboarding again, and his shoes that are 21 years old finally broke.
Yeah.
So other than that, all is well.
Shoes Instagram.
Yeah, 21-year-old shoes, I would imagine, like they break down at some point.
He bought them when he was living in Michigan in US for 1 year. So, and they no longer, it's a very specific click-in technology that is no longer being manufactured.
Well, you got to
Yeah.
let us know. So Anthony's down and visiting in South Florida, but he knows all about snowboarding and skiing. So if he needs us to bring anything to Vegas or
eBay.
to
eBay.
Oh, he found it?
eBay
Right.
second hand. You can only buy their second hand shoes.
Okay.
So
Something newer than 21 years, but I'll let you get started.
how do I slideshow? I will slideshow. Can you see the screen?
Yep, we got it.
All right. So do I need to introduce you, or can you introduce yourself?
No, everyone here knows who I am. No need to worry about that. Inner circle
right.
seller, coach, software with data dive, blah blah blah. All right, go ahead.
All right. Well, this is Sebastian, my husband, who pretends to play drums. I gave him drums for our anniversary about 2 years ago. A few things he can do better. So can I. But in any case, he has started selling on Amazon since 2014. The reason he started selling is because he was very, very annoying, and he's German. He had, it was between us moving from China to Singapore, and he had about 6 weeks of vacation saved up. I still needed to go to work. He could stay at home. He had nothing to do. So I came across Amazon FBA, and that's how he actually started. Currently, we ourselves have 2 brands. One brand is an everyday carry niche, and the second brand is in skincare that is manufactured in Germany specifically for men. So actually, the hoodie he's wearing, this is our skincare called Männersache. That's the logo. So we actually, our first products or our first brand, they're actually all manufactured in China and also a little bit in India and in Germany. And the second brand, we're actually decided to do everything as close as possible to the country where we're selling, which is Germany. So we decided to do basically nearshoring. The second brand is all made in Germany. We had some problems with the packaging, but even that we're completely transferring from other countries to Germany. To quickly tell you about myself, my name is Yulia. I've been working in product sourcing, supply chain, category management, and everything related for the last 19 years. I do consultations for Alibaba, for example. I do master classes for the manufacturers, and I teach them on how to communicate with all of you. You know, first of all, kind of hire someone who can speak English kind of thing and actually answer the questions that the people are asking you. I also work with global sources, with Amazon, and Amazon is one of our direct customers. We also work with a lot of different companies that have nothing to do with e-commerce, but more of governments and multinational corporations like Siemens or Schneider, for example. Yeah. We also do events across the globe and participate, and we're starting a few more things here in Germany. A few years back when Corona started, unfortunately for the whole world, a lot of my old customers, they started to come back to me and asking for help because China was closing down faster than any other country in the world, and everybody had problems with actually, having anything manufactured. We had a customer who placed an order for $500,000, and the factory wasn't doing anything. So we quickly had to transfer him to Vietnam, and Vietnam still had an opportunity to produce everything because they closed down a few months later. I started a company a few years ago because of this, which is called Signify Global Product Sourcing. And in about 2.5 years of our official existence, we currently, at the stage where we're about 60 plus people, and it's actually all women except my husband Sebastian, who is our only guy. I said not a very nice girl simply for the reason because Sebastian is in general a very nice guy. I'm Russian. I'm very direct. I don't like BS. I prefer to be, so sometimes I might sound rude. If that is the case and somebody hears that, I am sorry, not on purpose. About us, blah, blah. So I want to talk about a few things today. And if you guys have any questions in between, that'd be really great. Brandon, maybe because I don't want to open the chat because then it would be seen here. Brandon, can you be my assistant for today? If Brandon is there? Okay, then I will.
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry, I can.
So can you, when the question, because I don't want to have the chat open, so when the questions come in, you can interrupt me and we can answer the questions
I'll let
in the
Marlene
chat.
do that.
Okay,
Marlene's
then
really good at
Marlene.
that. Yeah, no
All
problem.
right, Marlene.
Gotcha.
You see, outsourcing everything to a woman. I mean, how common of a man, right? So yeah, we'll talk about the general supply chain outlook for 2024, what the hell is going on, and right? We'll talk about nearshoring, general product sourcing in China, product sourcing in ROW. This is what we call ROW in our company is rest of the world. So any other countries other than China. Two ways to ask a question: raise your hand and put your question in the chat, obviously. At the end of the presentation, you see a link for a survey. Marlene, are you supposed to read this or me? Okay, I'll do it. It really helps us a ton if you could fill it out. All right, anything I've missed? Prizes. I don't know what the prizes are, but I hope they are very good. Marlene, anything that I missed to mention?
All good, Julia. We can cover this at the end of the presentation about the survey. Thank you.
All right, no problem. So, a lot of people, so these are the basic things for everybody, whether you're a beginner or you're already selling for 7 or 8 figures. These are the basic things that you actually need to be looking at. Sometimes we forget to look at the basic things. So 2024, things to consider actually. So fuel prices. We've seen significant fluctuations on the market in general, but currently the predictions for 2024 are set to decrease. So currently all of the predictions say that the fuel costs, the fuel prices will decrease. Logistics and shipping rates are predicted to, go up even more due to different political situation. Obviously, demand, yes, but we can see that the demand right now is still weaker in comparison to what we had during the Corona times. So as much as demand is increasing, it's still not at the level that it was during Corona. But in general, we're seeing and we will see even more of an increase in terms of logistics and shipping rates. Inventory costs. So you have different types of costs, which is, for example, holding costs. So holding costs are when you need to actually store your inventory, which will include different types of rent, utilities, etc., etc. You might be using a 3PL warehouse, or you might be using, for example, doing directly Amazon FBA. Either or, one of the things we suggest to, or I suggest to consider, and this is what we're doing for a lot of people right now, is not drop shipping, but drip shipping. So there are different companies on the markets out there that can help you drip ship your inventory bit by bit into the final destination. For example, whether you're Amazon FBA prep warehouse or Amazon warehouse in general. So you don't, because the storage fees in China will still be cheaper, and sometimes it is actually better to do LCL shipment, right? When you're sharing a container with somebody, and when you are not using the whole space at the most at the time when the demand is highest, right? So for example, the demand was highest right before Chinese New Year, and demand will be extremely high right now after the Chinese New Year, because a lot of people had stock that was like, had manufacturing that was finished, but they did not have an opportunity to ship the products. So if they will ship a full container or half a container right now, in general, it will be a lot more expensive, right? If they were to split it, for example, send some quantity, 20% right now, 20% in 2 weeks, etc., etc. So this would be drip shipping, and this is something that definitely is a good thing to consider for 2024. So, and the other costs that we have are costs that are associated with the products becoming obsolete, right? Outdated. So for the consumer, whilst the consumer preferences are changing, like if I were to have headphones that had the actual wires, this is not something that's being used. So don't be afraid of discarding and discarding your products, and actually switching to some and making some improvements in order to make sure your product is not obsolete. Because from personal experience, we had a few obsolete products, and my husband was so personally attached to them. I'm more cutthroat. I'm like, I see this is not working, boom, done, boom, right? I'd rather lose a little bit of money than a lot of time and a lot of money. My husband is a little bit different. He has an emotional connection to the products, which sometimes kind of makes his judgment not exactly the best. So if you sometimes don't see your judgment as the best, as the most clear one, obviously you have a lot of people here in the group who can support you and who can share their honest opinion without any BS and saying, dude, you gotta drop this shit. Excuse my French. So there are a few other things that need to be taken into consideration, and a lot of those things we will look later can actually be discussed with your manufacturer in order to optimize even your costs with the existing manufacturer. So in general, production costs, and this can be something that can help you negotiate with your manufacturers. If we're taking raw materials that are used for most of the manufacturing in the world, something, for example, for manufacturing of plastic, wood, glass, etc., etc., in general, currently we see decrease in the price of the raw material across the globe, and the forecast is that the decrease will continue. So one of the things that you can actually do is, let's say you have a wooden table that you sell out of acacia wood or something like this, or walnut. One of the things you can easily do is you can go on Google and see what are the prices for acacia wood currently worldwide. If you see a general decrease, you can actually communicate with your manufacturer and say, hey guys, Where do you buy the raw material from? How much are you paying for it? They don't necessarily always will answer you directly, but if you're building a good relationship with your manufacturer, which we will come to a little bit later, they are likely to actually share a lot more information with you than you expect. Labor costs, due to current inflation all across the globe, due to general crises, if that's a word, across the globe, the labor costs are predicted to increase. Minimum wages in third world countries, in developing countries, and the general wages in developed countries, yes. So the general labor costs will increase. However, one of the things that I'm actually missing to put here is the amount of mechanization of the factories across the globe. So meaning how much machinery is being brought in order to substitute the actual physical labor of humans. So this is on the extreme rise right now because factories in the long run and in the short run actually want to save on costs because FTEs, full-time employees, are the largest cost of most of the organizations in the world. And because of the more machinery the factory has, the less labor, physical labor from humans cost they will have, the more likely you are to get a price that will be at a lower price point, which is great. Supply chain disruptions, natural disasters, that's a big question. We had, every time I go to US, there is something happens, and that's why my flights are delayed and canceled, which is the smallest of the problems, but there are earthquakes, hurricanes, pandemics. We can't call war a natural disaster, but it's a political event. So this is a big question. But considering the current situation on the global markets in terms of global warming, etc., we can see it getting worse every single day. So in general, people who work in this kind of, I predict that, there will be 10 hurricanes next year. All those guys are saying that there will be more weather disruptions every single year. So this is something you also need to consider in terms of your supply chain. Political and trade events. We all know what's happening in the world. I come from Russia. My country attacked Ukraine. There is a war. We have problems in the Red Sea. We have many unstable situations. And the next big thing, because I assume a lot of you guys are actually in US, is of course what we call in the industry the Trump tax, and that can be a little bit disastrous. Again, there is a little bit more information on this later. Regulatory compliance. It's good news and it's bad news. It's good news if you're the type of person who prefers to have higher barrier to entry, so your competition will have a lot more work to do in order to actually catch up with you. I give you one of the examples for US in December 2023, cosmetics industry, and in general, like cosmetics, skincare, in US, they have increased the regulations in regards to actually, selling, cosmetics on the US market, that they need a lot more certification and this needs to be done better, etc., etc., etc. Again, this is very good for consumers. This is not very great for sellers unless you are into selling the products that have high regulations, so it prevents others from entering. Me personally, me and my husband, our second product is skincare for men. We like high regulations because a lot less people are likely to get into the products like this. So in general, if you look at US, if you look at Europe, if you look at Australia, Singapore, regulations are increasing. increasing day by day. And we're on the track to, like, having them more and more. One of the things that you definitely need to consider for 2024 is supply chain diversification. That means try to have more than one factory producing your product. And I'm not only talking here about a backup, right? So let's say you're producing headphones in China, you're doing private label, and you're purchasing it from one factory, and then you found the second factory next door. That is your backup in case your first one, I don't know, goes belly up, or you're selling like crazy. So this is wonderful. You have a general backup. But currently, what we're suggesting is to have a general backup, not only in the country where you produce the original product, but also in the country that is located a little bit further away and as close to you as possible. Electronics, of course, in today's day and age is still a little bit harder, simply for the reason it's mostly China. But there are many other products and many other categories of products that people are selling across the globe. For example, I have this beautiful notebook, right? This is a company from Australia that sells these notebooks all across the globe. They're very specific, astrological, etc., etc. So originally, these guys, they were manufacturing their product in China only. But due to their supply chain being like their delivery time must be extremely short because it's astrological, so they have a very short time frame. They had a lot of, and do have a lot of customers all across Europe. So shipping them from China, they were actually air shipping them all the time. Heavy notebooks, air shipping all the time. So all of their margins were basically eaten by the flight. So our job was to actually find manufacturers in other countries. And for a paper product, it's relatively easy. So currently, they're producing these notebooks, not only in China, but we diversified their supply chain to India, to Turkey, and to Poland. It's important to have many different backups, especially when you have cultural differences and when you have different distances, right? And at the same time, you have different import taxes for many different countries. So the import tax for paper products, the ones that will be shipped from Europe to US, will be lower than the tax for the same product that will be shipped from India or from Turkey. And this is something you need to consider. Nearshoring is definitely something to look at. We'll get into this, and working on the BOM together with your existing manufacturer. For those of you who don't know what the BOM is, it is the bill of material. So basically, it includes all of the information on what is the product made out of, price for everything, and even price for labor. So the BOM is extremely important and something that I do really suggest you get together with your manufacturer to discuss. If you're starting out, that's a little bit of a different story. You don't really have the leverage yet to discuss this with your partner on the other side, with your manufacturer. But if you have been producing with your supplier for some time, you have the leverage to actually talk to them. And if you have an opportunity to actually go and visit the manufacturer, for example, going to China during the Canton Fair, eating delicious food, and going to KTV, you have a lot more leverage to discuss and to lower down your BOM, your bill of material. A lot of manufacturers are a little bit afraid of actually sharing the information about the BOM, because they are afraid of you seeing how much money they're actually making. And that prevents them from talking with you in that regard. So one of the things you actually need to do is you need to be absolutely and completely open and honest with your manufacturer and be with them on the level of a partner rather than you are a buyer and they are a manufacturer who produce a product for you. You need to talk to them and you need to show your cards to them. We'll get to this a little bit later. I keep saying this, but we have 3 hours, right? So we should be okay. So plan ahead for a full year for sure. And please, guys, and I keep saying this, but people keep missing this. Please, if you're sourcing your products from China, from India, from Mexico, just Google what are the national holidays in that particular country and when do people in that country actually do not work and when they do work, and plan ahead. What you also can consider, and this works for China as well as many other countries, especially if you're sourcing from US or from Europe, are annual contracts. Annual contracts is when you go to a manufacturer and you say, hey guys, I want to sign a contract with you for the year of 2024, that this year I will buy 100,000 pieces from you of these particular headphones. And I will purchase them throughout the year, and I'm obligated to purchase them. And even if I, don't purchase everything out, I will still pay to you for the actual products. So this is where the proper planning, right, comes ahead of how many products you're willing to sell and you think you will sell. And the annual contracts, they allow you to actually pick up smaller batches of products from the manufacturer. So for example, let's say 10,000 pieces, not 100,000 pieces, 10,000 pieces of this product you want to purchase throughout the year. You sign a contract with them and you say that in the beginning of March, I want to pick up 2,000 pieces. So you're paying only for 2,000 pieces, but you're obliged to pick up the whole quantity all throughout the year. Usually what happens is the manufacturer themselves, they need to get different parts, right? They need to buy the plastics, they need to get the electronics, etc., etc. So based on your annual contract, they will have an annual contract with their own manufacturer, so they will get better pricing, which will also allow you to get better pricing as well. Right? And this is where you can renegotiate with the manufacturers and get better pricing for yourself. One of the things to mention is, of course, you need to consider what is happening in the world right now and what is open to us in terms of routes. Again, I assume most of you actually sell in US. So there are a few ways, if you're purchasing from China, there are a few ways that the products are coming your way. So the first route is the Trans-Pacific route, Shanghai, Ningbo, Shenzhen, and it goes towards the west coast of US. Then it gets offloaded, and then it's called last mile trucking, or it goes by Amtrak by rail in US. So that's the first one. The second route is, of course, the famous route through the Panama Canal, which is and you the goods get to the port of New York, for example. Which becoming extremely complicated. If you see my wonderful picture, number 2, Panama Canal, right? It had very big problems in 2023, and already in the beginning of 2024, the problems are not only still there, they're increasing. The number of ships they're actually letting through the Panama Canal is, I think, about 70% lower than it was at the same time in 2023. And the third route is, of course, the Suez Canal, right, Red Sea, which currently, for obvious reasons, so the most currently from US used, which is the Trans-Pacific route through West Coast, and then there is the last mile trucking. So this is something you need to know, and you need to make sure that you don't consider route number 2 and number 3. You actually need to communicate with your forwarding companies and the shippers and ask them what will be the route. because a lot of shippers right now are, especially the Chinese ones, they're trying to push the ships through the Suez Canal, because the terrorists they're not attacking the Chinese ships, and I heard some rumors that the Chinese are paying them so the ships are let through. But all of these are rumors and bad things are happening there. So my suggestion is definitely to talk to your forwarders or to your manufacturers, if you're using your manufacturers directly for your shipping needs, to make sure that your goods are going through the Trans-Pacific route and they go through the last mile shipping. So that's important. There are many different things that can be spoken about in regards to manufacturing as close as possible to the point of sale. So the best thing to do is to currently consider nearshoring. So nearshoring is basically try to produce your goods as close as possible to the country of sale. So if we're talking to US, the two closest countries would be Canada and Mexico, and those countries do produce quite a lot of different goods, but it's not only them. It can be just in general transferring your manufacturing, your business into the countries that are as close as possible. So this is definitely something that we're looking at. And if you look at us, if you look at our company, currently about 65% of all of our projects, they are running outside of China. And it is not because we're encouraging people to do so, but because people are trying to switch away from China for many different reasons, whether they're political or they are marketing reasons. Currently, we've also seen an unfortunate development from Mexico, where a lot of people starting to say we don't want products made in Mexico either. Again, due to the current different political instabilities in US, they say a lot of our consumers, they don't want to buy made in Mexico, they want to buy made in the USA. Right, nearshoring in general is something to consider because you need to diversify your manufacturing. Nearshoring can also help you with your marketing USPs, with your marketing unique selling points. Meaning, our products that we sell, our cosmetic brand, Menazaha, we're selling it on a price point way above Nivea and L'Oreal and all of those cheap products, but not as expensive as the most expensive products. But we have good ingredients. And one of the biggest things that attracts our customers and why they keep buying is that it's made in Germany. It's made locally. It's we're saving the nature. We're not shipping thousands and thousands of miles from abroad. We're doing everything here and we're providing work to local people. So this is something that is definitely exciting people in today's day and age. So eco-friendly and supporting the local workforce. Don't get me wrong, there will always be those people who will buy the cheapest stuff for almost no money, where you probably lose money. But maybe those are the customers that you don't want to target. Maybe it's good to consider to sell something more expensive with higher margin. You might sell a few less units, but your margins will be higher and you're actually making money. And, people will spread the word about this a lot more than about the cheapest products. At least this is what we've seen so far with the people that we work with. So, nearshoring, realistically for the US, it's a complicated issue. So it's a big slide, and I hope that Marlene and Brendan will share all of those slides with you guys later. But nearshoring for US, it is possible, but there are certain problems that you can face. So first things first, the red things are the things that are more complicated, right? The ones that are kind of stayed in black is something that's to your advantage. So proximity and time zone is definitely something that's an advantage for you. You can visit the people, you can give them a call, you can communicate with them, or can you? There's in one of the red points is language compatibility, right? So do you actually speak the same language? When I went to Mexico for the first time, I'm a movie freak. I love watching movies and TV series and all that stuff. And in movies, all the people from Mexico, they speak English, at least the movies I watch. When I actually went to Mexico and I went to a 7-Eleven or some supermarket or something like this, nobody could speak English. And for me, this was extremely like insane. What is happening, right? No, you guys live right on the border. And we were like on the border with US. Like you're supposed to speak English. That's logic. But then when I started digging deeper and trying to understand the culture, I understood that most of the people in Mexico, they actually don't learn English. Only if you're going to kind of private schools and paid schools, etc., you will learn English as a second language. So there goes my, I'm going to find out so much about that and about them. It's so interesting, right? I don't speak Spanish except cerveza, por favor, and I don't even drink alcohol. So here, language compatibility might be a problem for you. If you're trying to source something from Canada, that's a little bit easier. Cultural affinity, right? It's the values. It's what me and Brandon, we were talking about in regards to understanding the different cultures. Just a hint to all of you guys directly from the perspective of, we do sourcing all across the globe. One common thing that we've noticed that the warmer the country gets, so if the temperature throughout the year in a particular country is kind of warm, where people sort of have summer all year round, let's take the Philippines, let's take Thailand, let's take certain places in Mexico. It is very noticeable for us that those people are less hungry. So the people in those countries, they feel like they don't have such an affinity for business, that they don't have the drive, that they're very relaxed, they're very, comfy. Okay, if it doesn't work today, then it doesn't work today. Maybe it will work tomorrow. So, and India is kind of a little bit of the same way, and Bangladesh. So there is that cultural affinity that you need to take into consideration. Of course, if you are nearshoring, let's say, and you're sourcing from Mexico or from Canada, travel a lot more convenient. You can actually visit the factory, you can make tons of, and you can use those videos to present them to your customers, like, hey guys, look, this is the backside, or like that, the back end of our manufacturing, here, take a look. Regulatory alignment is of course a big thing, because there are so many different trade agreements between the countries that are located closer to one another. It is more likely that you will get the manufacturer who already has all of the certifications in place. As much as China is developed on many different points, sometimes they lie a lot. And sometimes they lie even without realizing it, because they say yes when they don't know the answer, right? So this is the cultural thing that people should be kind of aware about. So definitely different types of intellectual property protections. Again, free trade agreements, the countries are a little bit scarier towards one another, so they enforce things a little bit stronger. Response time, this is in red, even though, let's say, Mexico and Canada, of course, are a lot closer in terms of time zones to US. But it's, again, different countries and different ways of people dealing with the business, and there are different ways of reaching out to the manufacturers. We all know that a great way to reach out to manufacturers in China or to find manufacturers is actually Alibaba or 1688, right? 1688, when you say it in Chinese, it means Yao Liu Baba, which is Alibaba, right? So it's literally a Chinese. It came first, actually, Yao Liu Baba, and then they put up the Alibaba, the English version. So we know that this is a great way of finding manufacturers. And I think there was a question there about global sources, if they're comparable. Yes, global sources are actually a big player on the market. They're comparable. They actually have very nice trade shows in Hong Kong, in Indonesia. I think they're even doing a trade show in Mexico this year, sometime in August, if I'm not mistaken. They have sometimes manufacturers that are not present on Alibaba or on 1688. Their huge focus is on electronics. So, but yes, they also have a lot of the same manufacturers as Alibaba. But global sources, they behave in a little bit of a different way. I feel they are a little bit more compliant in comparison to Alibaba. I think they're both compliant, but I think global sources is a little bit more down to earth. So yeah, it's not a bad resource to use. But again, China, we have Alibaba, global sources, etc., etc. Other countries, we don't really have that much, or at least that's what we think. So we need to find manufacturers in very different ways, and finding those manufacturers is not easy. And when you do find those manufacturers, actually getting in touch with them is the big pain in your tushy, because numbers are outdated, they're not working, the number is wrong, it's not there, email not there, LinkedIn not there. So it's a lot more complicated to get the correct information in the first place. So this why the response, might not be as fast as one expects. So cost savings, of course, lower transportation on costs of your goods. And one of the important things actually to mention is a higher financial turnaround for yourself. As an Amazon, e-commerce, or any other seller, you need to have money, right? You need to have your finances working for you. When you're placing an order from China, from the point you actually paid your deposit to the point where you can start selling, if you are not air shipping part of your products, it will take what? If it's the first time, right? If you're doing the proper sourcing, samples, placing the order, delivery, let's say 3 months or something like this.